Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the People Progressing podcast. And today I have Michael Belew on. He's got an amazing story, an amazing outlook on life, and was introduced to him by a friend of mine. And just really excited to have you on, Michael. And we're here to inspire and help people keep progressing in their life. And I usually just start out by asking all my guests on my show, where did you grow up? What did you like to do as a kid? Some of the things that shaped you as you were growing up, sports or activities that you did, or where you grew up, or any of those kind of things, so we can get a kind of a background of who Michael is.
Yeah. So I'm Michael. I was born in Dallas, Texas, um, and uh, went through school up until about the third or fourth grade. Um, and so I was really little. I don't remember too much living in Dallas, other than going over to grandma's for lunch or on Sundays and that sort of thing. But my mom married my stepdad when I was in the fourth or fifth grade. And so we moved to Alabama. And I started living in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Um, Growing up, I went to a private Catholic high school and middle school, I guess. Um, and I played soccer, was really into cross country, loved playing ultimate frisbee. That's probably my favorite sport of all time. If I could play it some more, I'd love to. Um, and yeah, I had a bit long career in Boy Scouts. Started when I was 11, worked my way up to becoming an Eagle Scout
Oh,
eventually.
that's awesome.
I have a twin brother. Me and my twin did all of that together throughout the sports, Boy Scouts, all of it. We did most of it together. Um, and when I went into junior, senior year of high school, the talk is always, where are you going to go to college? What are you going to do next? What are you planning for? And Alex and I didn't really have too much of um, a focus, I guess you could say. We applied to some colleges, but weren't really serious about it. And we didn't grow up with all the money in the world, so um, paying for a high education was out of the question. So um, it was either going to be community college or we looked at going into the military. And so after meeting with an Air Force recruiter, um, we kind of fell in love with the jobs in the special operations career field. He wanted to be a pararescueman and I wanted to be a combat controller. Those are two very niche special operations roles within the Air Force. Um, and we started to go back to the recruiter. We ended up going to a developmental recruiter who helped train us physically to be ready to take on some of the physical stuff that is involved with special operations. Um, and then eventually we enlisted and yeah, had a great time.
So, so when you're talking about special ops, is that like a TAC? Is that the TAC part of the Air Force?
The TAC part,
Yeah,
the
special
terminal.
ops, like you go in and you rescue a downed pilot behind enemy lines and those kind of things. Is that what you were training to do?
That was what Alex was training for a little
Okay.
while before he switched career paths. My job would have been like essentially the guy who calls in air support on like a Navy SEAL team or a Green Beret team or
Okay.
something like that.
So I have a former player that does that. That's now teaching or is an instructor for that in San Antonio.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and he was been on my podcast. His name is AJ Jones, and he's gone through all of that. Done a year over uh, on the Ukraine Russia border. Did some things over there, and now he's an instructor in San Antonio. So it sounds just exactly what you're doing. And it's I commend you for that. And things changed for you though, Michael. And why don't you explain what happened? You guys were training hard and you got a little time off and you decided to go swimming and things changed drastically for you at that point. If you can go,
Yeah, so to kind of paint the picture a little bit, in special operations, you have to get your foot in the door. It's not just you
oh, it's
walk in
hard.
and you're trained for the job and then you
Yeah.
do it. There's an assessment portion, and it's a very, very intensive, long process of physically and mentally just demanding. Um, it's very demanding physically and mentally for a long time, and so it's very draining. Um, and honestly, you have to motivate yourself because there's very little motivation to get up and work at 4 a.m. and work out for 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day during that assessment. And then afterwards, we go through what's called a pre-dive course. And that's also very strenuous, very taxing. And so we were doing a lot of stuff that's very stressful, and it's just a tough thing to go through, essentially. Um,
Michael, can I ask you a real quick question?
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just have to get through this. It's not hard. I mean, it's not easy. It's probably one of the toughest things you can do in the military, what you were going through. And you said you have to motivate yourself. What motivated you to do it, and what motivated you to get back up the next day and do it again?
Yeah. So it became a bunch of different things. It's not one thing that always kept me going. It was a cumulative bunch of different things. The first thing was honestly, fear, fear of
Yeah.
failure, fear
Okay.
of not being able to complete what I set out to go and do. And then once I met the guys that I was training around, once I got a feel for what I was doing, it became more of um, a brotherhood pact. That became my why. I wanted to go out and do my job because I knew I could, if given the opportunity, to go and be the guy that brought other people home, be the guy that, falling in love with the job and the career field and the brotherhood. Like I wanted to preserve that. And I felt like I could have been um, the guy for the job to go and do that.
Wow.
That became my motivation.
So your purpose really became greater than yourself. I
I
say
would
that
say
all the
so.
time. You find your purpose when your purpose is greater than yourself. And when you first started it, fear of failure kind of motivated you. And
Absolutely.
as you got into it, the teamwork and the idea of rescuing a fellow Air Force person or a fellow military person motivated you. So it became a fear of failure to my purpose is greater than myself now. I want to be there for my teammates. I want to be there for the people I need to rescue. And
Right.
I tell people all the time, you find your purpose when your purpose is greater than yourself. And that really can really motivate you. So you owned your own motivation there to get through this tough training. I know what the training is. I've talked with AJ. It's people have no idea. I mean, we could go
No.
into that. They have no idea how hard and what you guys have to go through to be an Air Force special ops person. It's unbelievable.
Or any special operations gig. I
Yeah,
mean, doesn't matter what country, what nationality, it's all very, very difficult stuff to
right.
do.
And it's all because you have a purpose that's greater than yourself to serve others. It's amazing to me. I wanted to get that across first when you said motivate yourself because there's a lot of people out there listening who are looking for some kind of I say this all the time, Michael. Maybe you agree, don't disagree, but I say this all the time. It's hard to motivate people, but I think it's easy to inspire people to motivate themselves. And our job as leaders is to inspire people so that people own their motivation. You don't make it through special ops training if you don't own your own motivation.
Something
And
that I've heard a lot is you got to be your own self-cleaning oven,
oh
get rid
wow,
of all the junk and just keep working.
here we go, man. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
You're awesome.
So
Okay,
anyway,
so go into your story. I'm sorry. I
no,
just had to
you're
get to that
you're
point.
totally fine. I love that. I love that little tangent. But all of those courses that I was going through were obviously very strenuous and very hard.
Yeah.
I failed one at one point. I failed the assessment portion 1 point because I hit my head on a ladder and blacked out and had a concussion and had to be pulled from course. Um, and then the second time I failed was I failed a final eval on pre-dive. So I had to go through the whole 5 week course again. And so I had been through quite a bit, multiple different times, at least in the starting phases of getting your foot in the door. And then once I did pass pre-dive, finally, it was March or February of 2020. So right before COVID kicked off, it was literally the week that I flew to dive school was the week that everything kind of shut down. Um, and so we were in quarantine, we were not doing much. Um, and a lot of stuff happened. One of my buddies actually passed away, unfortunately, during a training exercise that we had the first time I went through dive, which was very unfortunate. It was, yeah, missed him a lot. It was a rough time, but we had that happen, and then we cut dive school short. They canceled it for a little bit, and then I went to go through airborne while we were waiting for the next course to start, and then we started back through dive. And about 4 or 5 weeks in, we had a huge test that came up, um, and we passed. And it was the weekend. It was a Friday, and I decided to go off base to kind of celebrate a little bit. And while I was celebrating, I ran into the beach, dove in head first, and rolled over my neck and broke my spinal cord and my vertebrae, my C7, which paralyzed me from the chest down. So
And that changed your life. I mean,
I would say so, yeah.
from that point, obviously. What was your reaction to that, Michael? What made you keep going from there? I know you couldn't do your training and all that anymore, but you didn't stop living. You didn't stop inspiring. You didn't stop leading. What was it inside you that stayed positive? I'm sure we all have choices, and one of your choices could be bitter or better. And maybe you were bitter for a while, which is totally, understandable.
Understandable, yeah.
Where were you? Where were you mindset wise when that happened?
Well, it goes back to the whole self-cleaning oven. You got to motivate yourself, type of mentality. I initially, when I broke my neck, I was sad, but I wasn't like downtrodden to the point of depressed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I was still living. I still had a family. I still had my teammates. Um, I still have a lot of things to look forward to and do. And that's kind of what I grabbed onto initially. Um, Also, to be honest, and this sounds terrible, but it was a little bit of a break. Like I could just lay around and not do anything after
yeah,
the past
yeah,
couple months of like intense physical activity, which was fun. I had a blast doing it. Not all the time, but it was like what I was forming to be part of my purpose in life.
yeah.
Um, I had a break for a little bit, being in bed after surgery, and it was kind of, I wouldn't say nice because it's not very nice to wake up and all of a sudden you're paralyzed. But it was definitely a break, as far as that. But I did end up having to pick back up in a very, very real way the physical training with physical therapy and occupational therapy and recreational therapy. All of the therapies, learning how to live life in a wheelchair, pushing a new wheelchair, um, transferring, moving myself by myself without the use of, all the muscles that I had prior. So it was definitely not as much of a break, but still work to be done. But it was different. It was a friendlier environment
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
than the military can be. Um, Very, very different, but I had something to work towards, and that kind of helps me to. If I have something to work towards, I'm usually good to go as far as my attitude, and I always have something to look forward to, so that always helps. Um, but learning this new body, and I still had hopes at the time that I would make a full recovery, and I still do. It's a little different of how it looks right now, obviously, than right after the injury, but yeah.
Where are you now, Michael? Where are you with the injury? You said you'd still have hopes of full recovery or recovery. Where are you at now?
I am 4.5 years post injury. So most doctors would say that your spinal cord takes about 2 to 3 years to fully calm down from all the inflammation and get back as much as you're going to get back within those 2 to 3 years. So I'm kind of past that point as far as what doctors say is possible. But I constantly do stem cell therapy, red light therapy, different things over the years that I've tried. Um, Taking tons of supplements, just eating healthy, staying as healthy as possible, doing acupuncture, a lot of massages. So just things like that to kind of help stay on the path of at least leading a healthy life. If not recovery, then as healthy as I can possibly be.
Okay. We're going to get into this now. You're in a career that you want to do. You want to help people, you want to serve people, you want to be part of this team, you want to go rescue people. You basically put your life on the line training every day, jumping out of planes and free diving and doing all these things to train to support and serve people, to help people get rescued or whatever it might be. All of a sudden, that's just taken away from you. And you're laying in a bed, and you said it's kind of a relief, you got a little rest and all that. Now you're out of the bed and you realize that has been taken away from you. How did you stay positive? How did you have a positive mindset? How did you go to those rehab sessions every day? What was your mindset like at that time?
Honestly, I don't know how. I think that's just like who I am. And I've had a great upbringing, I think, for my mom. Um, I don't know, man. I think it's just about realizing that life is a gift, and it's nothing crazy, nothing special, but just being grateful and thankful for everything really helps to put things into perspective. Like there are guys that I would roll around the hallways and see, and there were these people with red plastic coated rims. So you have spokes on your wheelchair. Sometimes there are coverings covering those spokes, and they had red. And I was like, "Hey, what are those?" Asking a therapist, and they're like, "Oh, those are people who can't be left alone because they have something that's going on mentally, whether it's a handicap, whatever it is. It could be cerebral palsy, it could be a traumatic brain injury, whatever the case may be, and they just can't be left alone." And I was like, wow, they're really like, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm a quadriplegic, I'm one of the lowest functioning people on the planet. Um, but there's always somebody who's got it worse, and there's always somebody who's got it better. So why complain? Why focus on what I can't control? And that's just kind of the mindset that I've always had, I guess, and kind of had throughout my rehab, and still today to a certain extent. There are some days where, it sucks. It sucks to be in a wheelchair sometimes, um, and the things that come with that aren't always fun. Uh, but by and large, like I'm not focused on the negatives, and I think that's the difference.
Has it been that way since the accident, or did it take some time for you to get there? So you had the accident and
I've
you were
definitely developed my attitude way more, but I
okay.
think the initial, the bulk of my mindset has been there just since day one.
It's amazing because you had so much of an opportunity to be bitter and pissed and go the other way with it. I just marvel at how you looked at things and how you overcame things. How much helping and serving did you do while you were in that rehab and in that hospital? of other people? Did you try to help other people with their mindsets and so forth while you were going through this?
I definitely made friends, and through those friendships, kind of shared, the joy of just being alive, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know that I'm sure other people would say I helped them. I just view it as I was just there being, if nothing else, just not a negative force of nature in the hospital. Because there are plenty of people who mope and just sit around and don't want to do anything because they figure their life is over because they're in a wheelchair. Um, so if I was helping, I guess it would be just being a physical example of what it looks like to go out and do stuff and be a productive member of society, even in a wheelchair.
Actions speak louder than words, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So let's get into what you're doing now, Michael. Where is Michael today? This is 4 years, little over 4 years that this has happened to you.
Hmm.
Um, I saw that you got an award from the New York Jets. You can talk a little bit about that.
Yep.
So where are you at now? What's Michael's day look like, and what do you want to accomplish in your life?
So the biggest thing is I got married about a year and a half ago.
Oh, that's
Well,
awesome.
it's almost 2 years now in March. March it'll be 2 years, which is crazy to think about, but that's the biggest thing. I love my wife. She's awesome. She's the rock of our relationship, and that's the biggest thing I got going for me, I would say.
Where did you meet her
Um,
at?
I met her. Um, Actually, you and I earlier were talking about Donnie, our mutual friend.
Yeah.
The same leadership seminar that I met him
Okay.
at, I actually met her at the youth version. So when I was 18, I met her at the teen camp version of that.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, other than that, um, I when I was at Shepherd Center, which is a rehab facility for spinal cord injuries in Atlanta, Georgia. One of the peer support guys who had broken his neck, several years earlier, got me in a rugby chair, a
Wow.
wheelchair rugby setup, and uh, it's the only disabled sport that is full contact.
No
And so he
way.
got me into the wheelchair. I was taping up my glove with the therapist, and he hit me. And ever since I've gotten that hit in that wheelchair, it kind of just like lit me up. And I was like, oh, I like that. I want more of that. And yeah, ever since I got involved with my home club team, Lake Shore. I don't know if you could see
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
wheelchair
yeah.
rugby.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Um, Been playing wheelchair rugby, just tried out for the national team. I barely missed the cut this time. I feel like I was really close. I just need to get a little stronger and quicker. But I really want to be on the Paralympic team going to the LA Games in 28, um, and be on the squad for as long as I can. And I just love the sport, love what it's done for me. It's helped me to grow in the wheelchair community and learn how to be a more functional wheelchair user. Learn a lot of stuff from a lot of different guys who've been there and done that. So that's been really cool to be a part of. Um, that's the biggest thing I got going other than, being a husband right now.
That's awesome. And you mentioned something, Michael, that kind of hit my earlier. Um, when you were in your training and you were going through the things that you had to pass to make it to the next part of your training and all that, you said you failed twice.
Yes.
Everyone fails. Every single human being on this planet fails all the time. And you mentioned earlier that part of your self-motivation was fear of failure. Then you did fail twice, which, like I said, people do all the time. What made you get through that? What made you keep going? And because when you failed that, you could have gone back into another job in the Air Force and been more comfortable and all that kind of stuff. But you failed and you kept going. What was inside you to say, I got to keep going. It's not going to beat me.
Yeah. Well, the first time I failed, um, was in the assessment course. Assessment and selection is what they called it back then. Um, and like I said, I blacked out underwater, hitting a ladder on a pool, and had to be taken out. But it was just the fear of the unknown. I think I didn't know that I could do something until I went out and actually tried it. And so I guess if people are listening out here, any advice I would say is just try the thing. Like go out and do whatever it is that you're scared of. Because number one, it's exciting. Some people say they're scared, but it's the same feeling. Excitement and scared is it's the same
Wow.
wavelength.
Yeah.
Um, and number two, once you have tried it, you have more experience with it. Personally, for me, like once I tried it, I was like, oh, I know I can complete this. I know that I can go and do this. And so that helped definitely for the second time around.
But you
Especially
almost died.
I did, yeah.
I mean, you almost died and you still kept going. I mean, it's amazing mindset. That's what I want to get at. It's the mindset to overcome something where you tried it, you almost died in it, and now you got to go face that. You got to go face that again and do it again. And you looked at it instead of looking at it really as an obligation, you looked at it as excitement. You looked at it as, man, I got this. I can do this. Like,
Yeah.
and did that help build like confidence in you?
I would say so, but I think more importantly for me it was okay, every single step of the way I'm scared. Every single step of the way I'm not sure about what to do. But the difference was is I just said I'm going to regardless. And it was literally like the next step that kind of helped me go forward because every single step was scary.
Yeah, yeah,
Every
yeah.
single step was like, oh my gosh, I just failed. Oh my gosh, this next course. Oh my gosh, dive school. Oh my gosh, my buddy passed away. Like every single step was terrifying. But the difference, and I think most people versus like most people who aren't successful versus the people who are, is literally everybody has the same steps, but some people choose not to take it, and some people do. And I feel like that's really the kicker for me is like I just decided to take the step. I just said, well, I could be scared or I could just be excited. And
Take the
yeah, that
step.
was the difference.
The the way to get to some place is to take that step, the next
Every
step.
single thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're in
And
a wheelchair, then it's a push. But
well, and I always say this that the superhuman power that we have as human beings is the power of choice. And when you look at the choices that you made in your life to take the next step, how powerful that choice was to make it. I'm going to ask you this question. What would have happened if you wouldn't have taken the step? You dive in, you black out, you almost die, you got to redo the course, you got to go do that again. In your mind, what would have happened if Michael would have said, "I'm done. I'm going to go do this job in the Air Force instead." What would we, you know, what mindset would you have had then or now, actually looking back on it now? What would you have felt?
that's an interesting question because I've never thought of that before. Like I've never thought, oh, what if I just stopped? Um, but I guess I would say I would have just started a path of decisions that would have made me a little more soft, a little weaker mentally. Um, and I probably would have had just a regular job in the Air Force for a couple of years, gotten out, and been just like every other first contract and out enlisted airman who's ever come through the Air Force, which is fine. You know, they live great lives. But there's nothing super special that I would have been able to accomplish, I don't think, had I just said, oh, that was it.
Do you
I'm one and done. I'm out.
do you think the R word would come into play? Regret?
Oh, 100%, 1,000%. And it still does, you know, like I make decisions every day that I'm like, well, maybe that wasn't the best. But at the end of the day, I'm doing my best. And at the time I was, so I have no regrets about it. But it absolutely would have eaten me up a little bit if I had said, you know what, this is too much. I don't think I can do this.
Well, I honestly believe that I have a saying that it's fear regret.
Yeah.
And my job as a leader, my job as a coach was always to make sure that when my players were done playing, they wouldn't have regret. That they gave everything they could to the process of being the best they could be. So when they looked back on it 10 years later, they didn't have regret. And
Yeah.
when I'm sitting here listening to you talk, it just kind of had an epiphany. It's you're going to have a lot more regrets on steps you don't take than the steps you do take. For example, let's say you went back in and you failed the dive test, you went back in and did the dive test and didn't pass it again. You probably still wouldn't have as much regret because you still went for it. You still gave it everything you had. You still pursued it and you still pursued a dream. Sometimes we don't always get to our goals and so forth, but the regret isn't really because we don't achieve the goal. The regret is that we didn't take the proper steps to get to the goal, or we didn't follow the process, or we cheated the process to get to the goal. That's where the regret comes. Or we didn't take the step like you talked about. It's an amazing story, and you don't have regrets. I mean, I don't think you have a regret on anything you did in the Air Force or from that point until now.
Not much. No.
Yeah, because you took the step. You took the step. So tell us about the Jets. What did they do for you?
Yeah, man. So I applied. Um, it wasn't actually the Jets, but it was a cool experience. So I applied to this organization called Tunnels to Towers, which there's a man who was off duty firefighter the day of 9/11 who, drove through a tunnel, got stuck in traffic, and ran in to help the victims of the 9/11 attacks. And his brother made this organization to help build homes for people who were first responders for that. And then it grew to government official or government agencies, military. And so they built houses for all sorts of people. And at the Jets and Colts game that I went to in November, um, they brought me onto the field and honored me as the veteran of the game. And then afterwards, in front of 80,000 people, said, "Hey, congratulations! We're surprising you with the keys to a new smart house that they're going to build for me," which is super exciting.
So they you're not in it yet. They're in the process of building it now.
Just got to, yeah, we're in the process.
Wow, in Tuscaloosa?
It'll be around Tuscaloosa area,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, that's so
Haven't gotten the
cool.
land yet, but yeah,
So
excited about
deserving.
it.
So tell me
Thanks.
what you do now. What do you do now to inspire others, Michael? Do you speak? Do you coach people? What do you do now to inspire others besides podcasts and so forth?
I've been really into wheelchair rugby. I'm not gonna lie.
It's awesome.
So as far as inspiring others, um, it's more of action right now than
Yeah.
actual words. Um, so I'm trying to be one of the youngest guys to do what I'm doing in my classification in the sport of wheelchair rugby, and to be as dominant as I can in the sport because I love it so much. And I want to do more through the wheelchair rugby community because I don't think it's big enough. I think that it could be a lot better in certain aspects, and I want to be a part of that change eventually. So I started by becoming, one of the best players to play the sport. That was like one of the first goals. Um, After that, I'm getting into real estate investing. Um, so just broadening, people's horizons as far as like who can do what. Um, and I mean like, you might not see somebody in a wheelchair going into real estate investing, and I'm just here to kind of help promote the stereotype that yeah, anybody can,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, so
You just
yeah,
so what you do, and not trying to tell you who you are, but you're a person that loves by your actions to inspire others, to get them and to get them to take action. You want to play this your wheelchair rugby because you love it for one. You love the competition of it. You love doing it, and it's fun for you to do. But you also do it because you want to show others in wheelchairs that they can do things like this too. Then you talk about you getting into real estate investing, and one of the things you talk about real estate investing, I want to show people in wheelchairs you can do real estate investing too. Actions speak louder for you than words for you, but it's all because you want to inspire others in your life's journey to inspire and help others realize that they can take that step as well.
Absolutely.
It's amazing to watch. It's where you where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Um, a couple of Paralympic medals, that would be nice. Um, a bunch of kids running around the house, the new built house.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, just very, very happy, surrounded by family and a great support system.
Well, your story is amazing and your story inspires others. I have three questions for you. I wrote a book called The Three Ps, Find Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. And I wrote it because I read a stat that 70% of Americans are disengaged at work. They don't like what they do on a daily basis. And I want people to find their purpose and passion, and I want them to live in it. Not just tell me what it is. I want you to live in it. What is your purpose, Michael? What's your purpose in life?
My purpose is to be a light for others and to show, um, to kind of transform the world through love, honestly,
Yeah.
and how I show up.
And what's your passion? What do you love to do?
Big competitive guy, so sports for sure. I love being around family and yeah, just being a voice of reason.
Yeah. Always your purpose and passion kind of help each other.
Yeah.
Voice of reason. You want to be that person in your family that brings joy to people and so forth. And that's kind of your purpose too. What holds it together is your perspective. You know, when your perspective gets tested a lot, and your perspective on life got tested big time.
Yeah.
What is your perspective that holds your purpose and passion together, Michael? When things don't come at you, think you're having a bad day, or things come at you that are frustrating for you, or whatever. What's your perspective that keeps you in your purpose and passion?
Well, we've kind of been talking about it a little bit, but one of the big things that I ask myself all the time that helps with perspective is just what's next? What's on the agenda? What do I do? What are the next steps? Like what else is there to go out and grab and get today? That's one of the big things every morning. I'm like, all right, what do I got? What's on the agenda? What do I need to go and conquer? Um, and then also just I don't want to be in a wheelchair. Let's be clear about that. I would love to be able-bodied. Like this isn't something that somebody would want, I
Right,
don't think,
right.
9 times out of 10. And I'm not, satisfied with being in a wheelchair, but to be satisfied with the life that I have and to be, at peace with this is it. This is what I have right now. And to not be, too excited about it, too negative about it, to just be who I am, where I am. Um, just being satisfied with where I'm at. That's another thing that I always try to keep in mind because everything's relative. And if I can keep that mindset of, you know, this might not be where I want to be, or this might be where I want to be, but either way, regardless of the situation, I am who I am and I'm satisfied with that.
Wow. So I have to ask this since you just said that. Is there still a chance that you could be out of your wheelchair?
I believe so.
Okay.
Depends on what doctor you ask, but um, that's my belief. I fully intend on making a recovery one day. Um, and it might happen, it might not. Either way, that's what I'm working for.
And I can tell you with your mindset, you have a better shot of making it happen than you don't because you're always taking that next step to make it happen. And you also can stay in the place where you're satisfied with where you're at. That's incredible mindset because so many people today compare, and the comparison kills the joy of life.
Yeah,
And it takes them away from being satisfied with where they're at because they're always comparing. How do you not compare?
it's tough. I do sometimes,
Yeah,
you know. I compare myself to other wheelchair rugby athletes. I compare myself to other, men my age. I compare my beard to my brother's. Like it's it's not something that I don't do, but I always realize like the fact that it's not going to help me or encourage me to do anything different. To compare myself to people, I have to. It's the comparison is me to myself yesterday, me today versus yesterday. That's the only comparison I care about. Um, And I think about those comparisons sometimes, different people, different things, but I don't dwell on it. And I think that's what helps me is I don't sit there and think and focus on those comparisons. They happen, I'm human, but I'm not going to sit there and focus on them, I
yeah.
guess is the difference.
So I have to ask this question. I have a former student who had an accident and is in the same situation as you. And she went to Craig Hospital here in Denver, which helped her really physically with the wheelchair and how to deal with things physically as best she could. But she said that one of the things that she didn't get a lot of is the mental side of it. Like once they said you're okay, you're kind of done with your rehab here, and then they kind of put her out in the world. I don't know if that makes sense, but mentally, somebody with an injury like yours, what would you have? What kind of advice would you have for when they come out of the rehab into the world and that's all of a sudden they're there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's tough because it is just it's almost like quitting cold turkey, like anything.
Yeah.
It's right in your face. It's blunt. It's very, what do I do now? And you help that by getting involved in a community. So whether it is a sports community, whether it's a rehab facility, whether it's just something, find people who are like you in some form. Like if it's a support group on Facebook, get on there. My wife is a part of a group called WAGs of SCI, and it's Wives and Girlfriends of Spinal Cord Injuries. Um, and when she gets on there, she finds, some sort of familiarity with the problems that she's facing and that other people might be facing. With wheelchair rugby, I'm one-on-one with guys who have the same problems and face the same things that I do, and it helps to kind of gain confidence in what you can do. Um, so yeah, I would say just get involved with something.
Community's huge. The outgoing Surgeon General, his prescription for America is more community, that we need to have more community. And with the advent of social media and cell phones and everything else, he basically said we have gotten away from community. We've gotten away from helping each other and supporting each other and being there
Yeah,
for each other and so forth. And I believe in that. I was a coach, and I think community to me is team. And having a team of people that you can always rely on and go to and look for support and help, and you give the same support and help to them is really, really important, and it's really healthy.
yeah, I agree.
Michael, I want to thank you for coming on. It's your time is valuable. What we try to do with our podcast is inspire people, and I know that you accomplished that today in inspiring people and helping people take that next step and go for that next step and so forth. And this is a start of a friendship between you and I, and hopefully we can get you in front of more people because your mindset needs to be out there. Your mindset of how you think and how you live your life in such a positive way to enjoy life is just truly inspiring. And I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, man. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast with Michael Belew. He's an amazing guy. I will ask you this, Michael, before we go. Can people get a hold of you? Do you do speaking or do you do any of those kind of things to help groups
I'm
or?
I'm open to it. I have an email, I have a phone number. Those are the only two really things that I have. But um, I did write a book actually. I have a copy right here. It's called Figure It Out.
Wow.
It's just a memoir.
How do we get the
I
book?
haven't done
How do
any
we
speaking engagements. Excuse me.
how do we get the book?
It's on Amazon. Figure It Out, Michael Belew. Should be on there.
And I want to tell you, to people listening, have him come out and speak to your group. Have him come, even if it's on a Zoom call or whatever, because the inspiration that Michael brings is truly inspired for the people at your jobs, your work, wherever, your family, whatever. I want to encourage you to start speaking. And I don't call it motivational speaking, Michael. I call it inspirational speaking. I encourage you to start inspirational speaking off of the things from your book. And I'm going to be the first one to get your book. So I appreciate you bringing that on. And
Yeah.
hopefully everyone can get that. And so everyone knows how to get a hold of Michael. Um, you can look him up online. You can look up his book, and I'm sure there's probably ways to get a hold of you through your book and so forth. And please, please, please keep progressing. And thank you so much for listening to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. Thank you and have a great day.